Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace, and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and the 8th show of the book launch, the Joy, Resilience, Connection, 3 days to start a joyfulness practice that fuels resilience. And so my guest for this episode is Alex Montoya. And Alex is the CEO and founder of the Alex Montoya Foundation in San Diego. And he's also an author and a speaker. He's written 8 books, including a children's book, Alex Masters the Monkey Bars. And his foundation creates inspiring in-person and virtual talks amplifying immigrants and people with disabilities. In 2020, he launched the Alex Montoya podcast, and he's a TEDx speaker, and he delivers a compelling message about overcoming adversity, defeating obstacles, and embracing the American spirit. He's received numerous awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award from the San Diego Hispanic Chamber, and he was given a Medal of Honor from the Colombia government, and he also carried the Olympic torch in 1996. He's a well-known speaker and has delivered his message at such places as Google, NASA, Harvard, and the NFL's Denver Broncos. He earned his bachelor's degree at the University of Notre Dame, a master's degree at University of San Francisco, and he's a native of Medellin, Colombia, and he now lives in San Diego. So I called this episode Finding the Blessings in Adversity. And the reason why I called it that is because I first met Alex at the Symposium for Personal Development back in 2016, where we were speaking. And when I heard Alex's speech, of course, I was, impressed with the talk that he gave and the accomplishments that he's had. But there was a particular part of it that really, stood out and caught my attention. And that was he talked about his older sister, something that she had said to him that motivated him to start his foundation. And he said that his sister just asked him how he was going to give back. And how that affected me or the impact that it made on me is, wow, he has an amazing family. And I know that Alex, knows this too, that he had and has an amazing family supporting him. So now I would like to introduce Alex. Hi, how are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So Alex is going to tell us his resilience story today. And that actually is, I mean, everybody has a lot of resilient stories, but Alex has had to demonstrate a lot of resilience throughout his life. So I'm just going to let him pick a starting point and tell you his story.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kate, and thank you for having me. I am so excited about the release of your book. I got to see an advanced copy of it, of course, and was just completely impressed. And just ordered my copy just the other day, so really excited to sit down and reread it. And I know it's just going to be wonderful and impact so many people. So, congratulations, felicidades to you.
Thank
And of
you.
course, when you and I met, the 2016 Personal Development Symposium was at Harvard University, which I think is critical for people to know that you have spoken in some really great, impressive places, and there's no bigger brand name as far as universities go, in my opinion, than Harvard. So so grateful to meet you there, and can you believe that was almost 6 years ago? Time.
No,
Excuse me,
no, I
was
can't. I can't believe how fast time has gone.
so.
Not just the last 6 years, but I just realized that my niece is turning 21,
Oh,
and
goodness,
it seems like she was just a baby,
a
you know,
millennium baby.
a
Yeah, absolutely,
couple years ago. So,
yeah, no doubt. Hey, I want to apologize to you and to your viewers. I'm getting over a cold, so if I cough occasionally, that's kind of why. But COVID negative, fortunately. Just your good old run of the mill holiday cold. So, but we're all good now. So you mentioned my older sister, and I'll kind of use that as a starting point. I come from a family of four. And actually, when I was born, I had two older siblings, including my older sister, Elizabeth, in Medellin, Colombia. And her and I did not get to spend very much of our lives together because when I was born with disability. As soon as I was born as a congenital amputee, meaning that I was born missing limbs. I was born missing three limbs, specifically both of my arms and my right leg. And it's really interesting because in our topic today of being able to choose joy and finding blessings in your adversity, the immediate feeling or reaction to my being born with a disability was one of panic and fretting and really, in some cases, a little bit of disgust or fear from doctors, from community members, from extended family within my family. I was born in 1974. I'm 47 years old, and in that era, in the 1970s, um, so many countries, because there wasn't the sort of communication or knowledge that we have today, so many countries had a pretty, I guess you could say, backwards or unsophisticated view of things, including disability, and really viewing disability as harmful, as a curse, as a punishment, but certainly nothing positive. And part of that being that at that time, if you had a disability in South America, you couldn't go to school. So if you couldn't go to school, you couldn't get an education. There were no special education services or anything like that. There just wasn't a whole lot, and essentially, there's a whole generation of people that were born or maybe became disabled, and that's it. Life just kind of stopped for them. And so I know that a lot of what that reaction was due to that. But it's very interesting that both of my parents, neither of whom had more than a grade school education. Uh, Certainly didn't have money. We were a very poor family growing up, but certainly were rich in faith and rich in just belief. And their belief and their reaction when people ask, "What are you going to do? You have the son born to you, and he's missing three limbs, and you got to take care of him, literally take care of him for his entire life. You got to do every single thing for him, and you have two other kids at the time. What are you going to do? And my parents' reaction, as I learned soon enough, uh, was this. Their reaction was simply, we're going to be grateful. We're going to be grateful for our son. We're going to be thankful he's not our son with the disability, or he's not our son missing limbs. He's our son. And we're going to get to know him and get to know his personality, and help him to try to be as independent as possible. But we are going to thank God that we have a son now, that we have three kids in the family, two boys and a girl, and we are just going to be thankful. And it was something that was pretty contradictory to what most people were saying, because again, um, technically what the naysayers were saying was right. We didn't have resources. There wasn't the sort of a system set up in the community to be able to give me special services. It looked like a life of drudgery, and for me, hopelessness ahead. But without having any sort of connections, without having any sort of advanced knowledge of services out there, my parents just chose joy, and they chose love, and they chose gratitude. Um, what I find interesting about my life story is that um, about 2 years later, I was about 2 years old. A family member of mine, an uncle in the United States in North America, literally bumped into, just one day, came across a gentleman that was with the Shriners organization. Now, the Shriners, for those that might not know, operate a series of nonprofit hospitals and burn centers across the U.S., and they will take kids within the U.S. and also South America and Central America. And if you have either an orthopedic need or are a burn victim, they will bring you to this country for free and provide services for free. Completely chance meeting, complete miracle, completely nothing that we knew anything about, or nothing that we could um, orchestrate. And it's interesting how, number one, that happened. So my father's and my mother's words uh, came true, that the good things will happen and things will work out. But also, in a sense, I feel they were also tested, because it wasn't until I was two. So they had 2 years. They had 2 years of saying this, probably to a lot of people doubting and naysaying and saying, "Oh gosh, that poor family, they got to take care of this kid forever." But indeed, when I was two, we came across the Shriners, and when I was four, I moved to the U.S. permanently in order to receive services from the Shriners, including being able to go to school and being able to receive prosthetics. Now, I'm going to hold up for the screen my prosthetic arms. These are the two arms that I wear, with two hooks at the end. These are essentially my hands, and I have a prosthetic leg as well. And I'm able to do everything I need to do in life because of these things. And so, because of that, when I was 4 years old, essentially said goodbye to my whole family, including my siblings, including my older sister, because we knew that, with the exception of maybe brief visits here and there, I was essentially saying goodbye to my family. I moved in with other family members, my aunt and uncle, my aunt being my mom's sister, and their kids. But it wasn't going to be the same as living with my paternal family daily. They weren't going to get to see me grow up. They weren't going to get to see me go to school. They weren't going to get to see me um, develop. And my sister and I certainly had developed a closeness in those 2 years, and so it was hard to switch from being around each other every day and having a close relationship, to now having a pretty I guess you could say long distance brotherhood and sisterhood, communicating through letters and such. But it was really interesting, because one thing that I learned at a very, very young age throughout that time is the principle of gratitude and seeing things from a perspective that is different from what the world may have. And I'll give you this example. When I first moved to the United States, I was an immigrant. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the customs. Had to learn all of that in addition to learning how to use my prosthetics. And person after person, strangers, neighbors, would come up to us and say, "Oh, you poor thing," or they would say to my aunt and uncle, "Oh, you poor thing, you poor family. Uh, this young man obviously only has one limb. Uh, he has to wear those arms. He has to wear that leg." And I very quickly learned that the proper response or the proper attitude was actually no. I get to wear these arms. I get to wear this leg, because again, for the first 2 3 years of my life, I had to be carried around everywhere. I had to be handed everything. I didn't have the arms and legs to be able to secure things or have transportation and be able to walk around, move around, have mobility. Suddenly, because of the services being given by the Shriners in this great country, I all of a sudden had arms, and I all of a sudden had a right leg so that I could walk. And so I quickly learned two things. Number one, these challenges weren't going away. I wasn't going to sprout arms and legs overnight and have this just be over. But number two, there were certainly challenges and tough aspects of having prosthetics. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy back then. It isn't easy now. There are challenges you encounter every day. But the alternative was, of course, not having prosthetic limbs and not being able to do a thing. And so I quickly developed a mindset of what the world sees as a challenge or something that encumbers you or something that limits you, you need to really see as a blessing. And it was very obvious to me, and it was very clear to me that that was certainly the case with these prosthetics. I mean, all of a sudden, from the age of 4 on, I could write, I could graph things, I could hold things, I could run and play with my friends, I could eat, and as you know, Kate, I love to eat. So I could do all these things because of all of a sudden having prosthetics. So the world would see me and say, "Oh my gosh, that poor young man, he has to wear prosthetics." No, I get to wear prosthetics. And that really extended into a mindset of look at your challenges and what the world may view as a challenge, you need to view as an opportunity. You need to view as a great thing. Uh, I'll fast forward now, and we can certainly go back if we need to. But growing up here in the United States also meant not being able to be close to my sister. She remained in Colombia. She emigrated to this country years and years later, but we were certainly both adults by then. And had observed from afar that I was very blessed to take the most advantage of this opportunity and go to school, become the first in my family to graduate college, receiving my BA from the University of Notre Dame, and then also receiving a master's degree as well. She saw that I had achieved dreams of working in sports, authoring books, becoming a speaker, getting to carry the Olympic torch. She said, she saw me do all of these things, and she was certainly regretful that she couldn't see it in person, but she was very thankful that she got to see it from afar and got to see me do all these things, and we had obviously stayed in communication with each other during that time. But then all of it kind of came to a halt 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago, when she was diagnosed with cancer. And she had immigrated to Atlanta. And so I flew out to see her there as she was receiving treatment. And unfortunately, she had taken a really bad turn. And as you mentioned earlier, her her message to me was, even though we've lived apart, I've seen you still do all these great things. You've had all these incredible blessings and all these great things happen in your life. Now what? and what's going to be your legacy. I think she was thinking a lot about legacy at that point because of where she was with her life and her health. But she was also thinking about, okay, you've had all these great things happening. You've achieved a certain level of success and distinction, but what are you going to give to others? What are you going to do for others? And that really got me to thinking, wow, she's right. I've had this incredible opportunity that not many get to have, and now it's time for me to be able to give back. So I created the Alex Montoya Foundation, which allows us to educate others on particularly immigrants and people with disabilities and those intersecting journeys. But even through that time, it showed me her resilience, that even though she was on her deathbed and even though she was experiencing a disease that eventually took her life 3 months later, she was resilient enough to think about, what do I need to impart to this world? What do I need to impart to my family? And we ended up with a younger sister years later. What do I need to impart to her in order to just make the world a better place? And that is part of resilience too, is avoiding the temptation to just feel sorry for yourself, but living in gratitude, living in joy, and then living with a purpose and being determined to have that purpose shine through.
Definitely. And don't you think it, I guess, changed your thought patterns and maybe highlighted some of the blessings in your life when you started thinking about that, about,
It absolutely does. I have, Kate, a theory that I utilize, and I actually entitled one of my books uh, with this term, which is simply see the good, being able to see the good in all things. The theory itself being that I challenge every person that I meet. You can go back and look at your life, either in the past or current form, and look at any single thing that you have found to be a bad memory or a scar or a challenge or an adversity, and you can find a minimum, a minimum of two good things that came out of that negative. Even if it's just that it made you a stronger person, it made you a tougher, more resilient person. But by adopting that mentality, that really changed my entire perspective of myself and of the world. When I think about my disability, certainly it would be contrary to human nature to not think about the fact that there are certain things that I can't do or that I need assistance with or take me longer to do. But at the same time, if it wasn't for the disability, I probably wouldn't have been able to move to the United States, at least not as young as I did, and be able to experience all the great things here. I have learned such a perspective and such patience, such an appreciation for life because of my disability, that it ends up extending into every challenge that you have, even non disability related. I already go in with the mindset, or I begin each day with the mindset of having gratitude and seeing the good in all things. And it makes challenges not seem so foreboding, but it also makes challenges something that you embrace a little more eagerly because that mindset just becomes part of who you are.
yes. So we've all had kind of a challenge with, the last couple of years with the pandemic and COVID. And being a speaker, that kind of took your life on another turn.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had worked in the corporate world for about 20 years, and my job situation, my career situation, changed in 2015, and it gave me the opportunity to really utilize what had been kind of a passion project or a side thing for me, and do it full time. And I dedicated myself to writing and speaking and really living out my dream. Well, it's kind of hard to be a speaker when there is nobody to speak to and there are no events. And as we know, especially in the early days of COVID, it took away all events and all public gatherings. But I firmly believe that I'm meant to do this. I know that I love doing this. I know that I'll do this in some form or fashion for the rest of my life. But I also had to be realistic about the fact that, um, uh, events weren't happening, conferences weren't happening. The world was pretty slow to kind of embrace the virtual lifestyle. And so even after, starting virtual presentations, quite frankly, it just wasn't a very sustainable thing for my business. So I had to simply be resilient and find a way to make it work. And I went back to work. I went back to the corporate field and did it as long as I could until I kind of had gotten back on my feet again to where I could re-engage with this as a business, as a vocation, as just my passion. And that's something that certainly was a very important lesson for me. That just because you are resilient doesn't mean there aren't going to be times where you don't have to reset. um, it would be very ideal and probably easy if all of our pathways were smooth and direct and it's kind of like taking a direct flight, right? That's always the preferred way. But sometimes you got to take a connecting flight or two. And what I learned was that uh, you need to have the flexibility, and again, be able to see adversity as an opportunity. My going back into the corporate field showed me that there was a learning curve in terms of technology that I needed to embrace. It showed me that there were certainly new things to learn and new ways of learning that I needed to re engage, but it also made me hungrier to be able to do this and achieve my dream. And no matter what anyone's goal or dream might be, if something makes you hungrier to achieve it, it's a great blessing. Not to mention, as I always try to view things, whenever I engage in anything whatsoever that winds up in new relationships, that's the greatest blessing of all. And going back to work and making new relationships through work was just the greatest blessing. But it also reminded me of the need to continue to be resilient and to say, well, I've made it this far and I've encountered all these challenges and I haven't stopped yet. So I'm going to continue to do that. And I would encourage anyone out there who, whether it be because of COVID or anything else, to not necessarily view any sort of a setback as a setback necessarily. Sometimes it's just a reset. Sometimes it's just a reminder. Try new things, try different things, but also to continue to test yourself as to how you view these things as a positive and get back on the path. And once you find yourself back on that pathway, you really are able to continually live in gratitude and continually choose joy because there is nothing more joyful, quite frankly, than getting off track on something and then getting back on track.
Yes, definitely. Resilience is one of those things like growth. You're never really done with it. You're always developing more or different.
Right. Well, there are always challenges, and one thing that I think is pretty prevalent in our society is we are very um, spoiled or inclined to want quick results to things, and we are very inclined to um, sometimes face challenges and want to just do away with those challenges once and for all. And that's only natural. I mean, we have countless examples of things that we're able to take care of pretty timely. But the reality is there are some challenges that are going to be with you forever. So for me, it's my physical disability, but also just the overall reality that there will be one challenge one way or another. As my late mom used to say, it's not one thing, it's another. But
Yes.
she said that not necessarily as a lament, but almost as a reality check that brace yourself, prepare yourself. You will find some form of adversity in your life every step of the way. I hate to give you a spoiler alert, but life is hard, and none of us have it figured out, and none of us, I don't believe, are to the point where we don't have any sort of challenge whatsoever. I think of the person that grows up poor and then wins the lotto and says, "My problems are all gone," right? Well, guess what? No, you now have probably a whole new set of problems. That's just the reality of life. But if you
Yes,
maintain that
it
consistency,
is.
if
And
you
I
maintain
don't
that,
know if this has occurred to you, but it occurred to me. There are people, including, I think I've thought it too, people who are thinking that it would be the worst thing in the world if we had to, wear masks for the rest of our lives.
sure, sure,
And,
yeah.
I'm just thinking that to you, that was probably, I mean, that might be a problem for you actually, but um, it probably seems also like a small inconvenience
Well,
compared
certainly, when
to,
you have a disability, one thing you learn is to constantly make adjustments. And one thing I saw right away when we started wearing masks was that I couldn't put a mask on by myself, that I would need some assistance in putting it on. But I looked at it as, again, hey, if this is kind of the most inconvenient part of my day, then I must live a pretty good life. I have certainly learned how to kind of pre-plan my day to where if I'm gonna go somewhere that requires a mask, how to be able to be in front of someone in advance that can put a mask on me, and again, not letting that challenge overwhelm you and not letting that challenge stop you, but by continuing to just adopt the joy and gratitude mindset, it makes a challenge really just kind of an inconvenience, and you're just kind of ready for the next big thing. Personally, if I have to wear a mask, forever, but it allows us to live and interact and move freely, I'm all for it. That's the least of my concerns.
yes, definitely. Well, I really appreciate you being here today and talking about this. I think it's an important message for just about everybody. So,
Thank you. And I would just encourage people to continue to see the good, embrace whatever challenges or adversities they have, but to know that gratitude mindset and the joy mindset is something that, number one, it will be continually challenged daily. And number two, that some days you just trade in one challenge for a bigger challenge. But if you're consistent in your mindset about it, there's not any obstacle whatsoever that you can't endure, and there's not any height that you can't reach. Along with strong faith and strong attitude and a strong support system, you really can maintain your joy, which is a very natural, I would say, characteristic for all of us, is to express joy, to smile, to laugh. You are built to be joyful, and there's no reason why you can't continue to be joyful.
definitely. So, there is a gift that comes along with this, listening to this broadcast or all of the broadcasts. And the gift was given by Terry Britt, and it is the Worthiness Quotient Quiz. Learn how to claim your crown. So, you can sign up for the gifts at soulfireradio.com/gifts. And to get the book, you can go to joyfulkate.com
Great.
and just click on right now through the end of the day. You can still get the 99-cent special promo offer. And I think the paperbacks will be downloaded either later today or tomorrow. So Thank you again, Alex. And the next episode will be at 5:30 Pacific time today, and I'll be interviewing Ted Winslow about how music helps you be more resilient. And I know that's a big help to me with resilience or joy.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
all right. Well, I am just going to say bye for now. And thanks again, Alex.
Thank you again for having me, and appreciate all your support. And thank you to everyone for logging on, tuning in.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.